60 years ago, author Ambrose Bierce called it a stench in the ears and slammed his window shut. Today, the banging, blaring, screeching, and grinding that assaults the ear of the city dweller is called noise pollution, and scientists all over the world are throwing open their windows to study it. They tell us that noise is literally deafening. Studies show significant hearing losses among workers in noisy industries, and the victims are not limited to boilermakers and riveters. Among working males in the United States, 2 out of 3 cases of deafness are attributed to noise, and the casualties include construction workers, steel and textile mill workers, and musicians. It is estimated that 17 million Americans in dozens of industries are threatened by excessive noise in their jobs, and a few states have placed limits on the amount of noise workers may be exposed to. Noise experts call communities beset by jet noise impacted areas. The term may call to mind a bad wisdom tooth, and the two conditions are not dissimilar in their capacity to make life miserable. The town of Hempstead, on the edge of Kennedy Airport, went so far as to pass a law setting maximum noise levels for aircraft flying overhead and issued summonses to the airlines for violations. However, the law proved to be unenforceable when the courts ruled that the airways over communities belong to federal rather than local jurisdiction. Recognizing airborne noise as a national rather than a local problem, Congress recently made the Federal Aviation Administration responsible for setting jet noise standards. Some new plans for dealing with the problem are described by the FAA's noise abatement officer at Kennedy Airport, Martin Gatch.
Under the new legislation, the FAA can apply a retrofit concept or a retrofit requirement. And by this I mean, as a result of the experimentations and the laboratory tests that have been effected by the National Aeronautics and Space Agency in cooperation with the FAA and manufacturers, apply new sound devices, sound attenuating devices, to the existing family of engines in the present fleet of aircraft operated by our air carrier fleet today, which numbers about 2,000. This infers a tremendous outlay of funds by the industry in order to accomplish this. But the FAA feels very strongly that if this is economically and technically feasible, this will be required through statutory amendment to the federal air regulations under the present legislation. And it's estimated that reductions in the neighborhood of 8 to 10 PNDBs, perceived noise decibels, which is the figure we use or the standard we use in the measurement of noise, can be affected by this retrofit program. Now, in order to come up with an estimate of what this means in actual terms, if we could judge a whisper at 40 PNDB, a conversation at 50 PNDB, and a shout at 60 PNDB, I think that a significant reduction can be achieved through the use of these new techniques to afford a considerable amount of relief overall to the public who live in the vicinity of airports.
Despite these improvements, a truly quiet jet engine remains only a theoretical possibility, and the FAA urges the concept of compatible land use as the solution to the jet noise problem. Under this plan, real estate surrounding airports is reserved for industrial and recreational use rather than for residential development. For the householder who must build near an airport, the FAA recommends a defensive strategy. Martin Gatch.
We realize that land is extremely desirable and costly, close to city centers. And we feel quite strongly that if housing has to be constructed in the vicinity of airports, it should be properly constructed with noise attenuating devices, necessary air conditioning, tight-fitting windows to afford the relief to prospective tenants. This has not been the case in the past. and construction has been allowed to continue close to the boundary of airports, causing great irritation to the tenants who eventually move in, frequently not being made aware of the problems that they're going to face. An excellent example of very fine compatible land use in the vicinity of an airport is the construction of the Pius X Elementary School, which lies just a short distance off the end of one of the very busy runways at John F. Kennedy International Airport. Now here, 1,400 youngsters study and work in comparative quiet. The building was designed primarily from a noise abatement point of view, yet the work is allowed to go on in the school with minimal, practically nil interference from aircraft noise. Now, this is a type of construction that we emphasize should be done in the vicinity of airports. This is the primary approach to the solution of noise for airport neighbors.
While jet ports are a necessity, they are a nuisance as well. And the problem of jet noise is central to the conflict over the construction of a fourth jet port for New York. While everyone agrees to the need for the fourth jet port, understandably, no one wants it in his own backyard. As suburban resistance continues to grow, aviation authorities are seeking new solutions to the problem of airport congestion, solutions which may shift some of the noise burden to the city. Robert Alex Barron.
We are also concerned very much with a new threat, which is that apparently while we're waiting to build the fourth jet port, the decision has been made to make Manhattan the fourth jet port. What I mean by that is that they are going to carve the city up into a series of small airports, and they give them fancy names: Heliport, Stowport, and though it's claimed that these planes will land on the river edge, I don't know of any airplane engine, especially one that's going to carry the 200 passenger planes that they are designing for these Stowports, that is not going to radiate noise past the river edge and disturb people who are in the schools and homes, rest homes, cultural centers, and so on along the river edges of New York. And to me, this is incredible. When we haven't even started to cope with most of the noises that have been bothering people for the last 20, 30, 40 years, we are now going to, without any real checking, because there are no standards, there are no noise standards for these things, we are going to introduce this aviation into the center of one of the most congested cities in the world.